On this episode of the Girl Talk podcast.
What's the old thing you should never get into a discussion when you're tired?
It's halt, right?
Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Hello there. You're listening to the Girl Talk podcast, brought to you by our friends at Fox Toyota of East Tennessee. My name is Carol.
I'm Kelly.
My name's Tricia.
Fight. Ooh, it's time to fight.
Sounds aggressive.
I'm telling you. Is it okay to disagree anymore?
Oh,
Absolutely.
Yeah, but culture, I don't know, is saying if we disagree, we can't have a conversation
you
about
must
it.
hate me.
Yes, I think that's unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's probably not where we want to hang out. But we're going to talk about today, how do you have disagreements and fight fair in relationships? This covers everything from friendships to kids to spouses to accountability partner, whoever it is. We need to relearn how to fight fair.
Yeah.
And I hate confrontation. Can I just be totally upfront with you here?
Who likes confrontation?
There are some people that
Some
like
people
it.
do. They
Yeah.
thrive on it.
Yeah.
Hate it.
And when they when I see them coming, I hide behind grocery store shelves.
Because you know it's going to be awkward.
Always.
Yes.
Because I'm going to try to make them laugh. And then they're going to be more awkward because they're going to be mad. That's my coping mechanism for everything. And it gets me in trouble quite a bit. But fighting fair has become one of those things that we cannot disagree. We can't have different opinions on things because we've drawn a line in the sand and said, you either agree or you're against me. And that's what I want to talk about today because, oh my goodness, all you have to do is turn on the news and watch for like 22 seconds, and there's a conflict of somebody yelling and screaming at each other on the television.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to tell you a story about a time I did not handle a conflict very well.
Okay.
So when I was young and dumb, I mean, I'm still young and dumb, but back when I was really young and really dumb
and old.
Sorry, go ahead. I worked for a woman. I guess I was 24. I worked for a woman who eliminated my job. And
that wasn't nice.
Yeah, it wasn't very nice. But she just thought that all donors should be major donors and that $25 donors didn't matter one bit. And all donors should give $10,000. She was wrong.
Right.
And I told her.
Okay.
But I told her by screaming at her.
Oh.
Because I was 24 and young and dumb and immature and didn't know how to handle conversations well. So as opposed to coming to the situation and saying, hey, let me understand what it is you're trying to say, see your point of view and come to it in a different way, I just screamed at her.
Yeah.
And it did not end well for me. It didn't end well for the relationship and it didn't end well for the organization I was working for because in the end, she was wrong. And had I come to the conversation in a kinder, gentler way, maybe the crisis that they had could have been averted, as opposed to me screaming at her, which did not help the situation at all.
Okay, so I'm going to highlight a couple of things that you said because I think they're critical. You said listen. You said the word listen in that conversation, and I think we've forgotten how to listen. What makes that, and you probably are going to be able to give us like 1, 2, 3 of these. What are good listening skills?
Well, for sure, one way to test if you're listening is can you repeat back what the person said?
Right. And say things like, help me understand. Is this what you're saying?
I hear you saying that you don't need me in this position or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I hear you saying, and then you repeat back to them what they said. Is that what you're saying?
Eye contact, very important.
Sure.
And this, I think, because of the digital age that we live in, body language is very important.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like you can, like I liken it to when I was a kid and my mom sat in the choir for 1 week. She sang in the choir for 1 week because I couldn't behave. And she was doing all that her body language was saying, I'm in big trouble after church is over today. And her body language was from the choir.
Ooh,
yeah.
I bet you
was that
church
bad.
went on forever.
It did. I was
Those
like,
little slanted eyes.
preach a little longer. But, body language says a ton. And we don't often have that now because we handle things through emails and texts and, other electronic communication. But you can tell a lot from a person's body language, and we don't often pay attention to that. If you walk into a room and somebody's arms are crossed and they've got a, everything's clamped down, they've got a...
They're mad.
Yeah, they're mad. Automatically, okay, this is where we're at. And I think you spoke to a little bit of it. I think it takes a little bit of maturity on our part to be able to assess that situation and say, okay, here's how I need to approach a difficult conversation. But there are times when those just come on. You're not expecting them. You're, trying to pick out a good avocado and somebody comes beside you and, spout something off at you. I mean, sure. I don't know what they would spout off of you next to avocados, but sometimes
you took the only right one.
That's right. That's okay. In 36 seconds, it'll be bad, and I'll have to throw it away. But sometimes those conversations come on unexpectedly. But I think probably a lot of our preparation needs to be when we know we're going to have those conversations, and we know especially when there are certain people. I don't know about y'all's life, but there are certain people that I tend to have the same conflict with over and over and over and over and over again. And it's not a new conflict. It may be a new subject, but the conflict is still the same. Yeah. And so for me personally, preparing ahead of time for those conversations and knowing they're going to be difficult and just saying, okay, well, here's how I'm going to handle this. Here's how I'm going to respond. And I think that's a big thing too, when you said that, listening and responding as opposed to reacting.
Difference. There was this great book that a lot of people have read, Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Mm-hmm. Great book, best-selling author. He's one of his habits, I think habit number 5 was seek first to understand, then to be understood. Mm-hmm. And Stephen Covey gets a lot of credit for that being something he created, but that actually came from the Bible. Mm-hmm. Did you know that?
Yep.
Came from James. James 1:19 says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. And isn't that how Jesus also lived his life and his ministry? So if we just can first start by seeking to understand somebody else's perspective before we try to shove our opinion and our thoughts and our emotion down their throat, our conversations would be a lot better.
And I think, too, just tag teaming off that, we listen to respond, not to understand.
Yes, true.
Because we're trying to think of what to say next. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I find in a confrontational atmosphere especially, I'm witty, so things come to me quicker, and that's how I get in trouble. Because I'm automatically thinking a response like, I'm taking you down. Right. You're going down right now.
And we get defensive in those kinds of times, too, with conflict.
I think something that is important with regard to conflict is choosing the right time, knowing you do not have to have the discussion if it's not the right time. I'll give myself a B, maybe a B minus. In my last conflict, like with my husband, for example, we had one over the weekend, and I'm thinking back, there were some things that went well and some things that didn't go well. Mm-hmm. He brought up a situation, and he thought he was going to tell me something that wasn't going to be a big deal to me.
Right.
But it was a big deal to me, and it hurt my feelings and made me upset. Now, add to the fact that I had been sick, and so I'm sitting kind of in my sick couch area, and he brings this up, and I don't handle it well at all. I'm angry. I cross my arms. I turn away. I'm doing all of those things that you're talking about with the eye contact, and I'm signaling that I'm angry, and I'm trying to shut him out and make him feel bad by some of the things that I said. And he was surprised. But then I did something that ended up being good, actually. I said, this is not a good time to talk about this right now. I am not in a good place. So because he's asking me my questions about how I'm feeling, I'm like, I don't want to tell you that right now because I think that I'm going to say things that I don't really feel. And I think that this would be a better discussion if we had it on a different day. And so he respected that, and we stopped the conversation at that point. And I felt badly as the night went on, and I was thinking about it, and ended up, having a quiet time with God the next morning. And I felt God saying, "I want you to apologize." And I brought it to my husband David, and I said, "I'm sorry. I don't think I handled that well." And he said, "Actually, you did handle it well because you said that it wasn't the right time, and it wasn't the right time. And I wish I'd taken a few more cues before getting into that." And so it ended up being a good discussion, and we ended up having the discussion, and I had a lot more reflection time before we had the conversation. So I then explained to him why I was upset initially and what I feel about it, but I needed that time. So don't be afraid to say it's not a good time, because and I don't mean shutting the person out. I'm bad for that. But I mean, explaining that I don't have the bandwidth for this right now.
Yeah.
This is not the right time.
And it's good of you to know, too, that in those moments where you have that emotion, that if the conversation is going to be emotion triggered or an emotion laden, that maybe right now is not the right time. That's so wise, Tricia, for you to have known that about yourself and say, hey, this is not going to go well. That's maturity.
Well, I don't always do that. That's why I gave myself a B. I mean, it wasn't an A, but it was anyhow.
We give you an A on asking for space.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's I mean, just
it's
like
a fair question,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we talk about this a different time?
Right. Yep. When I can get my emotions in check.
Yeah. So how do you control that passion in the moment of disagreement? What are some other ways?
Our parents used to tell us, I'm going to count to 10. I'm going to breathe really deeply, and I'm going to count to 10 before I open my mouth.
My mom counted to 10 like every 10
Many
seconds.
Probably saved your life, Carol.
Probably so.
It's probably why you're still living there.
Yeah, probably so. Probably so. I was a challenge.
She may have needed to count to 25. Knowing you.
100.
Well, maybe.
Or 110.
So true. So we can ask for a different time. What's the old thing you should never get into a discussion when you're tired, angry, lonely,
hungry,
angry.
halt. It's halt, right? Hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it when you're at risk.
Well, and I think being aware of that is a step of maturity as well. Like being aware, okay, I'm hungry right now, and like I get so irritable,
cranky,
angry.
So asking, hey, can we grab a bite to eat? Maybe talk about this over lunch.
Yeah.
Always a good plan. Especially
nachos make everything better.
They do. We have proven that time and time again here in this for sushi. Okay, so lonely or tired, obviously those carry with them some baggage. But when you're really passionate about something, how do you get your point across and still maintain that relationship? Because if we're honest, a lot of exchanges that I see now, maybe I'm just seeing the wrong exchanges, but like I'm going to use Facebook for an example. A lot of exchanges that I'm seeing right now on Facebook don't build relationship. They actually end relationship. Like, if you agree with this, don't bother.
Unfriend.
Yeah, unfriend me, or I'm doing. I hate those posts. I'm doing a clean sweep of my friends list. I'm like, okay, whatever, knock me off. I don't
think
care.
a lot of that happens though in the heat of the moment, and so I think one of the best strategies we can employ is to breathe through it, stop, separate ourselves from the event, separate ourselves from the trigger, separate ourselves from the emotion of it, whether that's counting to 10 or whether that's like what Tricia needed to do and take a whole day, bring it up another day. You've got to separate yourself or else.
So here's my question.
For me, that trigger is going to be awful.
So does that mean we should not use social media? Because you cannot see body language on social media. You cannot hear tone. You cannot hear the emotion in someone's voice. So many of the kids, and I feel like that's part of the problem with social media is it goes out to a wide range of people, but nobody knows your tone. Nobody knows your body language. Nobody knows if you've eaten. Nobody knows if you're lonely. Nobody knows if you slept, all
and there's
those
no
things
amount of emojis that can help with that.
Right. And so I'm just like, why would you do that on social? But I mean, I've seen friends who for years over this last political season who disagreed on things. Used to be when we disagreed on things, it was okay. I mean, we still went to church together and shopped at the same grocery store. Now it's like, if you, do this and you don't do that, we can't be friends anymore. And I just think that's sad because I think the differences are what make us all better. Like the differences are what allow us to see that differences are a good thing, and we actually make a better society when we have differences. I mean, we don't want everybody to be a robot just thinking the same thing.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, of course not.
So
it makes for a very boring, vanilla kind of world.
Well, social media is especially tough in this regard because you can't tell the cues, and you can't give cues either to how you may think it's a funny joke and then it's offended somebody.
Right.
Or vice versa. So social media is tough. I heard somebody say, always, if you can, assume the best. Assume the best in the other person.
Yeah.
That either they're not trying to hurt your feelings,
right,
or they mean it in a good way, or something like that with regard to social media. I think social media is really tough for this. Yeah. And I try to avoid anything that I think might be perceived incorrectly.
Maybe we just, as a warning to each other and to keep each other accountable, if you're super passionate about something and you see something on social media, care enough about that person and say, hey, can we have a conversation about this?
Give them a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't go into the conversation with your guns loaded and ready to just blast them off the face of the earth. Go intending to understand their point of view and going through. There was a podcast that I don't even know how I got, but somehow I was just scrolling through and looking for something to listen to. I listened to another podcast, and they were going through and they were interviewing people who felt one way or the other about the vaccine. And what they did was they delved deeper into the why. Uh-huh. And what really was interesting to me is that people both for and against the vaccine had very strong, compelling, valid reasons whether they took the vaccine or they didn't. And I was like, how interesting, because I feel totally different about these two people. Because at the beginning of the program, they just stated their position. Mm-hmm. And then I heard the story, and I was like, well, yeah, that makes total sense for you. Right. And I think we've lost that part, that social media completely cuts the story out of it and just says, this is the way I feel, and this is right. And if you don't like it, then don't be my friend. That's not the way that relationships work. There's a story.
Well, and like I said earlier, with the seek first to understand, then to be understood. Mm-hmm. Social media has that completely flipped upside down.
Yeah,
because it's seek to be understood. Here, I'm gonna shove my opinion down your throat, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I want you to understand me, not I want to understand you.
Or it's my right.
Well, yeah, that's
big thing there. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's wrap all this
up.
Love first. Love first. Oh my goodness, first. Love first.
Yep.
Yeah. Hug it out.
Yep. I mean, that's what we're called to do, right? As Christians, as believers, we're supposed to love each other as much as or more than we love ourselves.
Forgive.
Yeah. And what's your thing about how long is the hug?
10 seconds. 20 seconds. Sorry,
20 seconds. Longer than that. We were in the office one day and she was like, have you heard that?
Yeah, 20 seconds.
You get like benefits, physical benefits.
After 20 seconds. Do you know how long 20 seconds is?
It's a really long time.
It is awkward. And she refused to let go. She was like, I'm hugging you for 20
seconds.
Kelly's a good hugger.
She is a good hugger.
It becomes awkward after about 5.
All right. I look forward to an awkward moment later.
I can't wait. We're going to video this after the podcast is done. An awkward moment with...
Is it over yet? I'm going to do a timer.
20-second.
You got 2 more. Lego.
Just go hug your friends.
Oh, we love you. We are hugging you right through this microphone. Ooh. We appreciate you listening to the Girl Talk podcast. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your feedback. You're welcome to email us, girltalk@thelightfm.org. Get in touch on the Facebook pages. All sorts of ways that you can track us down, and we'd love for you to do so. Also, make sure you subscribe to this podcast because we won't have to let you know when there's a new one available. If you subscribe, it'll just come to you automatically. And
what a gift.
That's beautiful.
It's like a 20-second hug.
It's like a 20-second hug, only not as awkward.
Slightly awkward. Well,
we love you so much. Want to say thank you to our friends at Fox Toyota of East Tennessee. We're sending you folks a big hug because we could not do this without your help. So thank you so much. And we'll see you next time we gather around these microphones for the next Girl Talk podcast.